All right, so today we're diving into something pretty major, pretty fascinating, I think. We're talking about UAPs. You'd asked about getting a breakdown of all this, and honestly, after going through everything, especially the Spanish podcasts to Danny, well, it's clear we're not dealing with just, fuzzy lights in the sky anymore. It's pilots, military, even aviation experts saying, hey, something's up. And it's not just like one-off things either. This podcast to Danny really hit on how frequent these sightings are, especially here in the US, right? To the point the government's like, okay, got to take this seriously now. Yeah, I mean, they even changed the name. UFO to UAP. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, it's a far cry from, just blaming it on weather balloons or whatever. Okay? This whole UFO to UAP thing, it's like things are getting real.
Yeah.
Especially for national security. That's a big deal.
All right, so break it down for me because I love a good acronym. Podcast did Danny talk about WHY, the name change matters.
They did. It's like unidentified aerial phenomena. It's broader, right?
Yeah.
Gets away from the whole aliens and spaceships thing and says, look, there's stuff up there. We don't know what it is. And that's what's freaking everyone out, especially with how advanced some of this stuff seems to be.
Makes you wonder if we're not top dog tech-wise anymore. What were some of the crazy things they were describing? Like, what stood out from Podcast to Danny?
Oh, man, so many times they talk about how fast these things are, how they move, like instant turns, speeds we can't even imagine, even seeming to just ignore gravity.
So it's not just WHOs flying, but how they're flying it, right? Kind of creepy even for an expert, I bet.
Definitely makes you think. And it's that, combined with how many people are seeing this, that's got governments, especially ours, really paying attention.
And where they're seeing them too. Podcast to Danny, they really dug into the locations, and it's not random, is it?
Not at all. Huge concentration around certain areas, especially near military bases. California, Nevada, Arizona. Places that already feel kind of mysterious, right?
Getting real X-Files vibes now? What are the odds it's all just coincidence?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Seeing them around military stuff, it definitely adds to that whole national security worry we were talking about.
Yeah, it's wild, right? Like, before we got into this, UAPs always seemed like, I don't know, a movie thing. But listening to Podcast to Danny, it's like, this is real life,
Yeah.
Especially with the whole military base connection. Feels like those jets got swapped with something we can't even explain.
Exactly, and that's what's got the defense people freaking out. Like, what if some other country figured out tech way ahead of us?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be bad news for, well, everything spying, fighting, you name it.
Okay, yeah, not great. But Podcast to Danny also made a point of saying this isn't just the military's problem anymore, right? Regular folks are seeing this stuff too. What do you make of all that, with people posting videos and stuff?
It's interesting, for sure. Social media, it's like a whole other world for UAP stuff now. And yeah, got to be careful with what you see online, but all those sightings, it adds another layer to this whole thing,
It's like they said, everyone's got a good camera now. But they also said some of the best reports, the ones you got to listen to, come from, like, the pros. They talked about commercial pilots.
Oh, yeah, when those guys, the ones who do this for a living, when they see something and can't explain it, you got to listen. Some of those stories, the things they're describing those pilots are seeing, it shouldn't even be possible with the tech we have.
So we got the military on edge, regular people filming weird stuff, pilots seeing things they can't explain. Feels like this is a turning point for the whole UAP thing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It makes you ask some big questions. Yeah. Like, are we seeing brand new tech? Maybe not even from Earth. Are there things in nature we just don't get yet? Or is it something else entirely?
Okay, now those are some questions. Part of me still wants to believe there's an explanation, like maybe some of this is just drones or secret planes or weather stuff we haven't figured out yet.
It's smart to be open-minded for sure. Even Podcast to Danny, they did a whole thing on debunking the common UAP sightings, remember?
Sure.
So yeah, some of it's probably just mistakes or tricks of the light or even people messing around.
But what about the ones that aren't so easy to explain away? Even Podcast to Danny seemed stumped by some of them. What if even just a few of these, what if they really are something we can't explain with our current science and tech?
That's where things get really, really interesting. It might mean we got to rethink everything we thought we knew about what's possible. Not just here, but maybe out there in space, too.
So, okay, things are weird up there. We've established that. But, like, what's the takeaway for us down here? That's what I'm thinking about.
Right. That's the million-dollar question. And Podcast to Danny kept coming back to that, What if some of this, just for a second, what if it really asks tech that's beyond anything we understand, changes everything?
Less ET phone home, more what does this mean for humanity, right?
Exactly. Think about it. Energy, how we travel, even just the stuff we build things with. This could change it all.
It's like they said, we're on the edge of something huge tech-wise. Except maybe we didn't even make the tech. That's the wild part.
Exactly. And that gets to another thing they talked about. Are we being told everything? Do governments know more about these UAPs than they're letting on?
Because, come on, that whole secret government, alien cover-up thing, it's a classic for a reason. Good story, but also kind of creepy if it's true.
Yeah, you got to wonder. Podcast to Danny, they talked about how hard it is to tell what's real info and what's fake, especially these days.
So what are we supposed to do? Info overload? How do you even sort through it all?
Got to be smart about it. That's what Podcast to Danny kept saying.
Yeah.
Find good sources, don't trust every crazy headline, and ask questions. Most importantly, stay curious.
Because who knows, maybe the answers are out there. Maybe it'll be some regular person who gets the proof just by chance.
Totally. This is everyone's deal now, the whole planet. Like Podcast to Danny said, whatever these UAPs are, just by looking into it, we're already learning more about science, tech, even our place in the universe.
Yeah. Well said. This has been, honestly, mind-blowing. Definitely makes you look up at the sky a little differently.
For sure. Reminds you just how much is still out there.
And hey, listener, you see something strange, something you can't explain. Don't just brush it off. Film it, share it, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to crack this whole thing wide open. Until next time, keep looking up and keep those questions coming.